calendar year 2024. What are we doing new this year? What is the strategy, right? This marks quarter number 1, right? So we are now in the first 12 weeks of the new calendar year, quarter number 1, right? So we got January, February, March, right? Closing out March madness to end off the first quarter. So what do we do in these upcoming 12 weeks, right? That's what we're going to be talking about today. For those of you who know me, you know I'm big on strategy, right? We count everything. We have clear-cut, very detailed and specific strategies on what to do, right? There's no magic bullets, but a well-planned strategy will yield you dividends, right? But you got to stay on point. Now, whether you're trying to gain weight, lose weight, reverse a chronic illness, this pretty much all comes into the same category, right? We are either healing or we're building, right? We are either in the infirmary or we're out on the field, right? Doing battle, so to speak. One thing that's very important to understand about chronic illness is that all chronic illness is a result of some form of a metabolic disorder. So the number one goal for us all is to optimize and improve our metabolic health as much as possible, right? And here's an example. If you're dealing with cancer, cancer is a result of a metabolic dysfunction. That metabolic dysfunction leads to the mutation and the overgrowth of cancer cells, leading to this needless growth. In a poorly planned diet can greatly contribute to that, right? So for example, let's say excess saturated fat, a lack of magnesium in the diet, a dehydrating diet, excessive levels of protein consumption. These are some primary contributors to something of that nature, right? Poor sleep quality as a result of a variety of different vitamin and mineral deficiencies, as well as chronic dehydration, chronic undereating, which most people are guilty of undereating, right? Or undereating specific things, right? So it's things like this that all over time lead to a metabolic disorder. Metabolic disorders typically are created in at least a year, but they often take several years to develop. So you at least need 1 or 2 years to develop a metabolic disorder, right? So you can get away with engaging in a poor habit or a series of poor habits for a period of 3, 6, or even 9 months, and you don't really start to feel the depths of that metabolic disorder until you're a year in, or a year and a half, or 2 years in. Right? So that's something to keep in mind. So what you want to do is you either want to get out of the metabolic disorder or you want to prevent yourself from getting into one. So we got to talk about brass tacks. Now, there's a few things that I want to mention that are part of the strategy, right? So I'm going to start with the simplest things first. So there are a lot of simple things that we can do to add into our strategy within this first quarter of 2024, right? One of them would be a morning juice. If you have a juicer, like for example, a Nama juicer, which is an amazing juicer that is all the rage now, a masticating juicer, right? That even makes plant-based milks. But in any case, one really good habit is to have some type of daily juice. Now, one of those daily juices is daily carrot juice, right? Daily carrot juice, to get an abundance of beta carotene that is then converted into vitamin A in the body. Vitamin A is extremely beneficial to your diet, right? And it is actually fairly easy to lack vitamin A, right? If you're not eating enough of that yellow and orange pigmentation in your diet, right? You can have a lack of vitamin A, which can lead to poor vision, excessive hair shedding, excessive chipping of fingernails, weak fingernails, dry skin, all types of issues like this. And even worse, you can develop hormonal imbalances as a result of a lack of vitamin A. Excess estrogen, where your estrogen is really excessively high, and progesterone is significantly lacking, right? So having more vitamin A would significantly contribute to improving in those areas. So a good strategy that you may want to consider is daily Carrot juice. All right. If you are chronically fatigued, right? You've got high blood pressure. You've got respiratory issues, right? You've got vaginal dryness. You've got erectile dysfunction, right? You've got low testosterone. You've got a fatty liver disease. You've got kidney disease, whatever the case is. If you have any of these issues, right, it would be a good idea to have a daily beet juice, right? So you juice beets with the beet greens, right? So when you get your beets, make sure you get your beets with the beet greens. All right. By the way, you know, of course, we like to count everything. So as far as that carrot juice, a good 16 ounces of carrot juice. That's a good one. So it could be a minimum of 8 ounces of carrot juice daily or 16 ounces of carrot juice daily. All right. Moving on to the beet juice. Juicing the beets, you get a good 8 ounces of beet juice, right? This thick, beautiful, dark red beet juice. Phenomenal for your blood flow. All right. This is blood juice. This is a big deal for raising hemoglobin, increasing every aspect of your metabolic health, right? So we're talking reversing insulin resistance, reversing diabetes, reversing kidney disease, reversing liver disease, all of these kinds of things, improving thyroid function, right? Improving sexual health. Beet juice is a big deal for that. Heart health, cardiovascular health, reversing things like atherosclerosis, right? So that's a big deal. So definitely, you know, drinking your 8 ounces of beet juice. Now, what you could do is you actually could combine carrots and beets with the beet greens and juice those together, right? And so then you do those collectively together and have a combined 12 ounces or 16 ounces of juice right there. And then, of course, with that juice, you can add in a Granny Smith apple. So the final conclusion there would be you juice every day, let's say 1 to 2 large carrots, or just 1 large carrot, and let's say 1 large beet with the beet greens and a Granny Smith apple. And you can do that every day, right, for your juice. And third, adding cucumber. You get like a good 6 or 8 inch cucumber and juice that. Throw that in the juice as well. Now you're talking about 16, 20 ounces of juice here. So you wake up and you juice that first thing in the morning and you drink that about 30 minutes after waking up or so. And then you go and you get your workout in. You walk your 2.5 miles, 3 miles, or whatever the case is after drinking that juice. Then you come back home and you have your first solid meal of the day. Right? That right there, that is a solid habit that will change your life for the next 12 weeks. That habit right there. You can take that to the bank. All right. That's a big deal. That is metabolic health juice. Dedicated for life. You said I have the Nama J2. Yeah, there we go. That thing's got raving reviews. Now, the reason also why that juice is really good to drink and then go work out is because that also provides you with real quick glucose to then power you through a workout. If you drink a juice like that and then you engage in resistance training, you get some great performance. You're going to get heightened levels of nitric oxide, vascular dilation for better oxygen, right? Of course, you're going to be hydrated through the workout. So it's a great way to train at peak performance and maximize metabolic efficiency during your workout. That is much better than getting caffeinated. Much better alternative than getting caffeinated. It's not addictive. It's not a neurotoxin. So you're not going to have all kind of withdrawals and side effects. You could do a juice like that perpetually. Just perpetually, indefinitely. If you don't have a juicer, I would definitely recommend getting one like that. Right, as what was recommended here in the comments, the Nama J2, right? So adding that into the strategy, that's a big one to add in that juice. There's a lot of other different juices to do. That's just one in particular that I know works really well, has yielded tremendous benefits for pretty much everyone straight across the board, including me, right? I was hitting those hard in the summer. So there's that. Now there's another food in particular that I want to talk about, that I don't think I've talked much about yet, and that is buckwheat. All right. Buckwheat is actually not wheat. It's called buckwheat, but it's actually not a form of wheat. It's a seed. It's not even a grain. A lot of people think buckwheat is a grain. It's often categorized as a grain, but it's not a grain. It's a seed. High in carbs, but not starchy, not heavy on your gut. Very easy to digest. It's a phenomenal food, right? 1 cup measured dry. It's like 20 grams of protein, 120 grams of carbs, and like 3 grams of fat. Tremendous amounts of magnesium, manganese. It's really like 3/4. You can get like 60 or 70% of your magnesium for the entire day just from 1 cup of that buckwheat, right? Measured dry, right? I say measured dry because if it's 1 cup cooked, you're talking about like a quarter of the value there, right? So measured dry. We're talking iron, copper, potassium, an abundance of fiber, B vitamins, folate. I mean, the whole nine. Phenomenal energy food, easy on your gut. And the beautiful thing about it, you don't have to cook it. You get your buckwheat, measured dry, pour it in a bowl or a pot or whatever, rinse it out well, right? So you stir it in the water and you rinse it out. You'll see like a film build up on the top as you're stirring it around and whatnot, and you rinse it out through a strainer or a colander or whatever the case is to clean it off. And then you put it back in your bowl or whatever you're soaking it in. You fill it up with water. Now remember, when you soak the buckwheat, over time, it'll blow up to like 4 times its size just from soaking it, right? So you can have like this little cup and that thing will blow up to like 4 times its size. So you get a nice big thing to soak it in. You put that 1 cup in and you leave it in the water and it'll just suck up all the water and just balloon up, and it'll become nice and soft and voluminous and just beautiful. It's a beautiful food, right? And then of course, if you're soaking it, what I like to do, I don't like to put a lid on it or anything like that, but what I'll do is I'll put like a cloth or a paper towel over the top. I soak it in a bowl, like a big bowl, and leave a paper towel over the top, right? And I'll let it soak, let's say for a few hours, or just let it soak for the entire day, right? So I'll let it soak for the day and then put it in a container, and that'll be the food that I eat tomorrow. 1 cup measured dry is like 576 calories. And very specific, right? I've been writing some diet plans and putting that in there, so I pretty much remember it. And by the way, I'm drinking water with chlorophyll, liquid chlorophyll. That's what's in here. So that buckwheat, that's like a meal on its own. Now, the interesting thing that you can do with this buckwheat is you can eat it for a breakfast, lunch, or a dinner. It's very versatile, and it has a nice taste. It has like a nutty kind of flavor to it, right? Great source of carbs. And if you're eating a carb-dominant diet, this is going to be something that's very worthy of. So you can have it with sliced banana. You can have it with a little bit of agave syrup or a couple dates. sliced bananas, sliced strawberries, blueberries. You can put coconut yogurt in it, things like that, right? There's a lot you can do with it. So you can eat it like a breakfast cereal. You can put sliced avocado over it. You can put seasonings, whether it be, garlic powder, onion, or curry powder, whatever kind of seasonings you want to put, basil, things like that, and mix all of that up in there. Tomato sauce, sliced avocado, chopped dinosaur kale or baby kale, or, watercress or arugula, baby spinach, red baby butter lettuce, or whatever kind of greens you want to do, and make a meal like that, right? It's very versatile. You can even have it with sweet potato, right? So you can do, let's say, baked sweet potato, and then after baking the sweet potato, you can you can dice it or slice it, whatever you want, and mix it in there. You can add hemp seeds, so you can have the baked sweet potato with hemp seeds. You can add crushed walnuts in there. You can add broccoli in there and mix all of that up in there, and that can be another meal like that, right? So there's a lot of different things that you can do with the buckwheat, or you can eat it by itself if you want to just have a straight up bowl of buckwheat, right? You can do that as well, right? That 1 cup of that, and that's raw buckwheat. I didn't say anything about cooking it. All you got to do is soak it. You can do half of it for lunch, do half of it with dinner, right? Or you can do all of it in one shot, depending on however you want to split up your meals. Phenomenal food. That can be a staple that you eat every single day, right? That is a staple food. Another thing that's a big deal to add into your diet plan for the next 12 weeks. Hemp seeds. Hulled hemp seeds, which are cracked hemp seeds. And when they're cracked or hulled hemp seeds, it's easier for your gut to digest them, right, and absorb the nutrients. I'm a big fan of those. Hemp seeds are a top tier level superfood. Hemp seeds are a big deal. All right. Now, the ones that are the primary seeds here are going to be hemp seeds, flax seeds, and chia seeds. But at the top of my list, personally, is flax seeds and hemp seeds. Right? And the hemp seeds are very important for your omega-3 essential fatty acids. Right? And a lot of people could be potentially lacking in the omega-3 essential fatty acids, right? Along with that vitamin A. So you cover your vitamin A with that juice. You can cover your omega-3 with the hemp seeds. And you can cover your magnesium and your manganese with the buckwheat. And then, of course, you can cover the rest of your magnesium and manganese with the hemp seeds. Right? So we're patching up the holes here. And, of course, all of the foods that I've mentioned, that juice, the buckwheat, and the hemp seeds, significant sources of iron, copper, B vitamins, and magnesium, which are essential for having healthy levels of hemoglobin and red blood cells. Right? Hemoglobin is a blood protein that is needed in order for your blood to be able to get oxygenated. Right? So in order to really leverage oxygen to the best of your ability, you need an adequate amount of hemoglobin, right? You need an adequate amount of red blood cells for oxygen uptake. And then, of course, you need to be hydrated. So you got to maintain your hydration levels, and that's what the benefit of the carbohydrates are, right? So big deal. So those hemp seeds, you can put those hemp seeds in your buckwheat. You can put it in pretty much anything. But here's a good one. Let's say you do coconut yogurt. Now, there's a brand of coconut yogurt in particular that has a really good nutrient profile called Siggy's coconut yogurt. You get 8 ounces of that. You get 4 tablespoons or a quarter cup of hulled hemp seeds. You throw that in there. You get, let's say, a half a pound of blueberries, and you throw that in there, right? You can get, like, let's say, a half a teaspoon of cinnamon. You throw that in there. And then you can put like, and here's a big one, iodized salt. And you can throw like a few pinches, 2 to 3 pinches of iodized sea salt, okay, in that meal. And the iodized sea salt, the reason why I specify that is to get iodine, right? You can unknowingly have an iodine deficiency, right? It could be a mild deficiency, or you could be pretty deep in there, right? But if you're struggling to lose weight, or you've got thyroid issues, add a little bit of iodine to your diet with that iodized salt. So you throw all of that stuff in with the coconut yogurt into a blender, you blend it up, and you puree it so you can get like a nice blueberry coconut yogurt bowl. And then you could do sliced bananas on top with crushed walnuts, like a 1/4 cup of crushed walnuts if you want something like that, right? And that's a phenomenal meal right there. And that's a meal that's easily like 30, 35 grams of protein or something like that, right? So if you're worried about getting protein in your diet, that's a great post-workout meal to have right after you had that juice in the morning. If you're getting another kind of coconut yogurt, let's say you get a coconut yogurt where it's just made from like coconut water, coconut milk, coconut meat, that type of thing. It's just straight up coconut, no additives, no nothing, right? It's not going to have the protein. So a great way to add the protein in, not only do you put in the hemp seeds, but you can also use pea protein isolate. Right? So like one that I like to use is called naked pea protein. And it's like 2 scoops, both is 27 grams of protein in it, right? There's one ingredient, yellow peas. It's the only ingredient, right? So it's not some frankenfood, you know, with all kind of colors and additives and sugars and all that added to it. Just peas. Right, so that's the only protein powder in particular I use. Aside from PB Fit, right, which is powdered peanuts. So you can throw a scoop or 2 of that in the coconut yogurt and puree that up, right? So you get the same amount of protein in there with that. All right. This is all raw, by the way. I haven't mentioned anything cooked. Well, aside from the sweet potato and the broccoli. Touching back on to that vitamin A, right? The beta carotene. Sweet potato. All right. If you've got vision problems, if you've got hair issues, sleep quality issues, hormonal issues, that vitamin A, that's where you want to get that beta carotene. So not only can you have that juice in the morning with all that beta carotene and iron and copper and all that type of stuff in there, but then in addition to that, later on in the day, perhaps with your buckwheat, you can have a 1/2 pound of sweet potato, and you do baked sweet potatoes seasoned with like cinnamon and a little sea salt, right? When you bake your sweet potato, what you want to do with that sweet potato is you want to clean it off well, right? So you can scour the skin, right? So you get all the dirt and everything out, make sure it's clean. And then bake it. Put your oven at like 400, 450, something like that. Bake it for 15, 20 minutes, something of this nature, right? And then boom, you got your sweet potato. Ideally, you'd want to do a few at a time. So probably for the week, maybe you want to do 4 sweet potatoes at a time or something like that, right? And then just wrap those up in parchment paper. And then boom, you got your sweet potatoes for the week. And then, of course, if you bake your sweet potato and you leave it in the fridge, it becomes lower on the glycemic index, because when you cook a sweet potato and then you leave it in the fridge, it becomes this starch-resistant carbohydrate, right? So essentially, it doesn't like warp your blood sugar up, right? Which, you know, sweet potato isn't bad necessarily for people who are insulin resistant or diabetic anyway. But if you really wanted to have another way of diminishing the glycemic impact of a food like a sweet potato or any kind of potato, then yeah, you know, you bake it or cook it, however, and then you leave it in the fridge, right? So that's one way of taking care of that, okay? So that sweet potato is a very big deal. And of course, it's an abundant source of carbohydrates. Really good for your gut health. good source of potassium, magnesium, manganese, calcium, iron, copper, B vitamins. You know, full nutrient profile. It's amazing, right? And I think like a pound of sweet potato was like 200 something calories. I think like 220, and like 4 grams of protein, somewhere along those lines, right? Now broccoli also high in beta carotene, right? It's a good source or food to synthesize vitamin A. So if you need more vitamin A, or substrates for vitamin A in your diet, that sweet potato and that broccoli combined definitely are a good idea. But now, of course, we want to spice things up in the diet, right? So moving on from there, of course, we got our buckwheat. So you can do sweet potato, buckwheat, and your broccoli, and then you make a sauce. You can do coconut yogurt with like a teaspoon or however much of curry powder, depending on how much coconut yogurt you use. Coconut milk you use. You do curry powder, you do garlic powder, you do black pepper, you can do cumin, you can do, what else? You can do, let's say a little bit of paprika, you can do parsley or basil, right? These are the kind of seasonings that you would put in there and then kind of mix those up in there to make a sauce, or you make your coconut curry sauce, and you can use that as a dressing to put over your buckwheat and your greens and your sweet potato if you want, right? Or you can do a tomato sauce where, you know, you do tomato sauce, black pepper, sea salt, you hit that garlic, turmeric, coriander, basil, or oregano, right? You can season it that way, mix it up in the tomato sauce. You can add nutritional yeast, 1 tablespoon or 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast, and nutritional yeast is a good source of B12. So it'd be a good idea to throw some of that in there, like 1 or 2 tablespoons, and it gives like a little bit of a cheesy flavor, so you could throw that in there. And then mix that up to create like a tomato sauce, right? Onion powder, you can put diced bell pepper and onion and run it through the blender if you want and create a sauce that way. You can put finely diced tomatoes. Not tomatoes. Mushrooms. So you get baby bella mushrooms and you can dice up the mushrooms, right? You clean them off. You can stir fry them a little bit if you want. And then you dice up those mushrooms and you throw that in there and mix it in. And then you can even put diced bell pepper and onions in there and basil or oregano in there. And mix that all up in there. And you make like a sauce with all those little things in there to create some extra flavor. And that is phenomenal. Okay, and you can put that over your sweet potato and your buckwheat and your greens, whether it be cabbage or broccoli or cauliflower, whatever you want to do, right? So y'all getting game tonight. As far as meal planning, we're talking brass tacks, right? We're talking vitamins, minerals, carbs, proteins, measurements, cooking strategies, recipe strategies, all of this type of stuff we're talking about tonight, right? This is what we're bringing into the new year. This is how we should be eating. Now, we've addressed vitamin A, we've addressed magnesium, which are super important. Things that people are lacking in their diet. We addressed iodine, which is also something that a lot of people are lacking in their diet that can cause hormonal issues, right? So then there's that. What's another thing? Vitamin E, right? If you're lacking vitamin E, which ladies, right, you probably got your favorite facial creams or soaps or things like that contain vitamin E in them. But if you really want to make the change in your body, you really want to see the change in your hair, skin, and nails, you want to raise your progesterone, you want to have better female health, you want to smell better, get that vitamin E in your diet, right? You want to reverse your Hashimoto's, you want to reverse hypothyroidism, or you want to get rid of your fibroids, balance your hormones, you want better quality sleep, whatever the case may be, right? That vitamin E, that's a big deal. So foods with that vitamin E, we got sunflower seed kernels. Now, sunflower seed kernels, you can add into that breakfast that I mentioned earlier with that coconut yogurt. Coconut is also a good source of vitamin E as well, right? So you'll be getting 2 sources of vitamin E with that coconut yogurt and them sunflower seed kernels, right? So we do that. Good sources of vitamin E. So you can do like a quarter cup of roasted sunflower seed kernels, right? Once a day. You can put it in a salad too. You can do a quarter cup of sunflower seed kernels in your breakfast, and then you can do it in a salad. So let's say if you really wanted to get your vitamin E in, you can do a salad with avocado slices, cashews, pistachios, hemp seeds, and sunflower seed kernels with chopped romaine lettuce, baby spinach, and baby kale. And you can even put diced onion and bell pepper in there as well, and throw some seasonings or whatever kind of sauce you want on there. The cashews are a good source of vitamin E. The sunflower seeds, the avocado, good source of vitamin E. And your greens, and the bell pepper as well, good source of vitamin E. And the hemp seeds, right? So all these different sources of vitamin E, they accumulate. All right. And that's a good meal to have later on in your day. That's a good meal to have like around 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening or something like that, right? More towards the end of the day. So especially if you want to construct your diet where your blood sugar, your biggest foods in the glycemic index, the bulk of your carbohydrates are going to be earlier in your day. That's going to be in between the hours of, like, let's say 7 a.m. and 2 p.m. And then the rest of your day is where your blood sugar foods start to taper down a little bit, right? And that's when you get more of your fats in and whatnot, right? So you can get your fats in real early in the day or later in the day, and then you have this concentrated period earlier in the day where you have more of your abundance of carbohydrates. We're talking about meals that have like 100 plus carbs at a time, right? Your fruit bowls and things like that, right? So, you know, it's a good idea to do 1 or 2 fruit bowls a day, right? Whereas each fruit bowl will be in between 300 and 500 calories, right? The sweet spot will be somewhere around 350 and 400 for most. But this is going to be dependent on how many meals a day you have. Excuse me. If you have 3 meals a day, right, you'd be doing 1 fruit bowl. If you do 4 meals a day, you'd be doing like 2 fruit bowls, right? So something like that. And of course, this depends on your goals, and you know, some people may need larger food portions. Some may need smaller. It depends on your lean mass, and it depends on how active you are, how many times a week you're training, how much weight you need to lose or gain, and how severely have you been under eating, right? So there's a lot of things that factor in, as well as how insulin resistant or sensitive you are, right? So there are different variables that will slightly tweak and adjust your plan, right? So it's not really like a cookie cutter thing. I'm just talking about a general strategy. All right. So that vitamin E, right? So I mentioned a bunch. Oh, and almonds, also a phenomenal source of not only vitamin E, but also magnesium, right? Pretty much all of your nuts and seeds are going to have an abundance of magnesium. Magnesium is like one of the most important minerals. Magnesium is involved in absolutely everything. Very big deal. Going into 2024, within these next 12 weeks, we want to make sure that we're getting adequate levels of zinc, right? We love fruitarian diets, right? We love it. An abundance of fruit in the diet. Phenomenal. We can have 3 fruit bowls a day, 4 fruit bowls a day. However, you want to make sure you're getting in your magnesium. And this is why I'm a big fan of diversifying a little bit. So, for example, you want to be getting your zinc, right, from your nuts and seeds. You want to be getting, so for example, with each serving of nuts, which is pretty much 1 serving technically is an ounce, right? So each ounce would be around 1 or 2 milligrams of zinc. If you're a woman, you want to get around 8 grams per day, at least. For men, you want to get around 11 or 12. But of course, if you're trying to really build muscle, you want more zinc than that. You may want double that, right? If you're really looking to maximize muscle mass gain. But the minimum for women is around 7 to 8 milligrams, and for men, it's more along the lines of 11 to 12, or at least 10. Right? Magnesium for most people is around 420, but it can be a lot higher than 420. Because the more active you are, the more resistance training you do, and the more of a metabolic disorder you have, then you should actually focus on getting more magnesium-rich foods that you can accumulate that magnesium in order to return to a healthy baseline. Right? Get back onto a more optimal level of homeostasis. So now you don't just get your zinc from your nuts and seeds, but if you do, let's say 2 to 3 servings, let's say you do 2 to 3 ounces of nuts and seeds per day, assuming you're eating fully raw, that would cover a little over half of your zinc intake if you're a woman, and a little bit less than that if you're a man. But now if you're getting your leafy greens in, and you're getting, let's say, 4 or 8 cups a day of your leafy greens, that'll get you the rest of your zinc, right? Or at least close to it. That'll cover the other, maybe let's say that'll cover like a good 40%. And then there's other foods. So it could be the coconut yogurts, things like that. They can be your buckwheat that you may want to have. You may want to have your raw overnight buckwheat. You may want to do oat pudding, right? And things like that. But one thing I'm a very big fan of doing is, let's say you do plant-based milk, any plant-based milk you want. You do that pea protein, right? You can do that. You cannot do that. It's your choice. Some people are like, oh, pea protein. Why are you going to be doing protein powder? It's because it's beneficial. If you're going to be against the protein powder, now it's not necessary, but it is beneficial. Now, if you say, well, I don't want to do protein powder, I want you to come up with one really good reason why you shouldn't. What is the negative result of implementing something like a pea protein isolate, right? What is the harm? What is the downside? If you're not able to give a clear answer of what the negative effect or the downside would be, why would you avoid it? Right? But anyways, aside from that, you can do it or not do it. There's really, it's up to you. But then you can add in, let's say, 4 Brazil nuts. Now, Brazil nuts is something I've really started implementing back into my diet again. Brazil nuts is a phenomenal source of selenium. Selenium is really important for balancing your hormones, raising testosterone, regulating the balance between estrogen and progesterone. It's really good for hair, skin, and nails, brain function, overall brain health in general. Nervous system function, all this kind of stuff. Selenium is a big deal. It plays a big role in a lot of neurotransmitter development, brain chemistry, all that kind of stuff. Really big deal. So that's selenium, iron, copper, magnesium, and zinc, right? And all you really need is like 4, I'll put up 3 fingers, 4 Brazil nuts. So you do 4 Brazil nuts, you do a 1/4 cup of hemp seeds, you do 2 tablespoons of ground flax seeds, right? Or flaxseed meal, right? And so then putting that in there. And then in addition to that, you can put in cacao powder, which is fermented cocoa. What else? You can add that iodized salt in there. You can add cinnamon in there. You can add a pinch of nutmeg, right? If you like nutmeg, you can throw that in there as well. And then you can add a couple dates. You can add agave or coconut sugar for a sweetener or whatever the case is. And you can put about 8 to 12 ounces of plant-based milk, and you puree that up. And then you can top it with whatever kind of fruit you want. And that would be a really big source of your zinc right there. Right? So with the Brazil nuts, with the flax, with the hemp, we're looking at about a good 6 milligrams of zinc or so, somewhere around there. And then of course later on in the day, let's say you do my raw vegan taco salad, where you're doing pistachios, avocado, hemp seeds, cashews, arugula, baby spinach, diced onion, bell pepper. That's where you get the rest of your zinc there. So pretty much in between those two meals right there, you can get like a good 12 to 14 milligrams of zinc. All right, and so that's how you cover your zinc, as well as your omega-6 and omega-3. Omega-6 gets a bad rap because omega-6, people are like, oh, you know, omega-6 is inflammatory. No, it's not. Omega-6 is anti-inflammatory. What people are talking about is, when they're referring to the negative effects of omega-6, what people are really talking about is cooking oil, right? Cooking oils, especially plant-based oils, are very high in omega-6 and 9. Now, it's not the omega-6 and 9 that's inflammatory. It's cooking it under high temperatures, which oxidizes the oil, causing it to be rancid. So then you end up coating your food in rancid oil. That's inflammatory. But omega-6 is anti-inflammatory. It's an antioxidant. Having more omega-6s in your diet will actually protect you against cardiovascular and coronary heart disease. All right. So we're talking about like more omega-6s in your diet, you know, can reduce your risk of heart disease by like 19%. It's a big deal, right? So yeah, it's an antioxidant, really good for not only just your dermis, which is your skin, but also all of the tissues that make up your internal organs, as well as your blood vessels, capillaries, everything like that. All right. Omega-6 is very important for the decalcification of arteries. So if you want to protect against atherosclerosis or reverse atherosclerosis, you're going to need omega-6, and you're going to need potassium, and you're going to need magnesium, and you're going to need zinc to do it, to decalcify. All right. So very important stuff there. So even if your diet was like fruitarian, meaning predominantly fruit-based, these are things you should definitely still be having in your diet because of the benefits they have. All right. So just clearing some things up, and we can talk all day, but these are things to implement within these 12 weeks. Now you can implement some of them, all of them, right? That's up to you, right? But these are some things that you can implement. If you hear foods to you that sound, you hear some things that I say tonight, and you go, oh, that sounds like it would taste really good. Or, oh, that sounds really doable. Jump on it, right? Implement it in. Really, when it comes to your healing journey, your building journey, it's just a series of lifestyle habits that you incorporate and you build on. And you do them for long enough, and they yield results. And then they yield dividends, which compound your results. Right? And so this is how quarter after quarter, year after year, you get better. Let's catch up with y'all in these comments here.